Gilamon, Gigamon, Gilamon, I don't know. Hey everyone, welcome to the Anderson Bros Outdoors. I'm Jake, and today is pure speculation. We're going to talk about the new Axial Gilamon. I don't know how you say it, but we're going to talk about it, so stay tuned. Back. As I said, my name is Jake, and today we're going to dive into the newest release from Axial. I can see that there's a couple of videos on the YouTubes already in reference to this with people that actually have the cars. I am not one of those people. Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of having the vehicle, so we're going to do some speculation on it based off of what information that we see on the internet about it. So backing up a little bit, today we're going to cover the new Axial AXP8 Alpha X-Ray Papa 8 Gilamon, whatever you want to call it. English is definitely hard for me, apparently. The new buggy from Axial that is really pretty cool. We're going to jump into the website here real quick and just kind of browse and see what this thing actually is. It looks like the next shipment is April 2025, so we won't actually see these for another potentially 2 months, maybe more. So I don't know that I would say that they jumped the gun, but during a release like this, I would expect to see some units available for sale. I don't know if there are or not. Again, speculation as the title states. It looks like there's two different liveries. There is a green livery that you can see here, which I think looks really good. There's also a red livery. Well, let's look at that one. I haven't actually looked at it. And honestly, I think it looks really good as well. So historically, with the Capra, I didn't really like the color schemes because the cage kind of matched the panels, and I like how the cage here is black and the panels are red. You know, just personal preference. Same with the green one. The panels are green, the cage is black. I think that they're probably using the same cage color because it's cheaper in the long run. This is an 8th scale buggy. I don't know if that's truly 8th scale or not. It is ready to run. It's obviously a brushed setup. I'm going to go ahead and venture to guess here that we're either going to run the Fusion SE, Fusion Pro, 10th scale versions, or we're going to run the new Fusion 8. It's hard to say until we actually get one of these buggies to be able to pull it apart and see what the motor mounts and the shaft diameter of the pinion is, and really what they're using for pinion excuse me, spur and pinion pitch. Looking through some of these pictures, we're just going to talk about what we see initially and dive into a little bit of detail on that. Looking at the overall buggy, this is really where the RC market is becoming extremely popular, is the buggy chassis. I know that there's been historically buggy chassis with the Bomber, the Wraith, the Rift, things of that nature, but within the last couple of years, We Rock has really kind of revolutionized the whole RC buggy space with their We Rock competitions. Now, the rules for those competitions is extremely strict in terms of scale-esqueness, if you will. And so it's really forced a lot of people to utilize more one-to-one style building methods, such as using metal cages and metal axles and real scale tires, miniature scale tires, things of that nature. With that being said, this is kind of like what this buggy is going for. It looks like it is a We Rock style buggy in 8th scale instead of 10th scale. Looking at the overall image of it, it does have the Axial features in it. I mean, it's a $579.99, so I don't expect it to be end all be all. It is priced within reasonable budget for most people. It's not 800 plus, but it's also not cheap either. Locally here in the United States, you're going to be looking at like $625 to $650 for the buggy after tax and potentially a battery. One of the things that I noticed immediately last night was the shocks. So it does look like they are internal spring shocks. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it does appear to be that way. Which is really cool from the factory. So they are in full bump position. We'll use this truck as an example so you can see the spring. The spring here, this is full droop. So meaning that the shock is completely extended as far as it can go. This is full droop, which is what people call full bump. And this is full bump, which is what people call full droop. So basically, the difference between this spring and the spring that comes on the Gilamon there is this has an external spring, whereas you can see right over here that the spring is inside of the shock body, so it would sit in here, and it is very likely configured to be full bump. Another thing that I immediately noticed is the axles, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So it's pretty standard, comes on 2.2 wheels with 2.2 tires. I don't know what the actual outer diameter of the tire is. Let's scroll down and see if we can find the actual specifications here. Oh, they're 5.5 inch tall tires. So 2.2 wheels, 5.5 inch tall tires. They're going to be rather large for anything outside of class 3 and potentially unlimited buggy territory if you were to comp this truck right out of the box. The tires are probably less than stellar. Again, speculation, but I haven't seen very many RTR tires, especially from Axial. The Capra is a prime example. The stock tires I didn't really like. So they could be good. Will they likely be good? I'm going to say probably not for comps. They'll be great for trailing. From the pictures of it crawling, it looks like it has good geometry on the rocks. And you can see a picture really of the size, right? So this is a person for scale. And it is a relatively large vehicle. 8 scale, I would assume, be a little bigger than that, but I think this is catering more towards the 10th scale market than it is the bigger scale, like 6 scale market. And I have a guess on why that is, but I'll save that for in a minute. So looking at it, the other really cool thing that I noticed immediately was the rock lights. So if you see here, it does have rock lights, and apparently those lights do change colors. So there's like 7 or 8 different colors that you can switch between, which again is a really neat feature. Overall, looking at it, I mean, it's the buggy itself is not really revolutionary. It's not groundbreaking. It's just a different cage with panels. It does appear to have Lexan panels, and drivers are really cool. I like how they are more realistic and not just kind of like a mold that looks kind of like a person, maybe not. Looking at the front of the truck here, you can see that the axle is a portal, and it's a little different. The way that they designed the axle is actually quite genius. So if you look at it, the axle looks like what we've been asking for. So I know historically haven't been very forgiving with Axial, especially with your SCX10 Pro and how I received my Pro kit. All of that aside, I think Axial's done something really cool here and innovative. If we look at the axle, you can see that the pumpkin is offset, meaning that the differential or front diff is on the driver's side, or if we're looking at it on the right side from the front, and the servo's on the left side, meaning that we have offset weight. So the pumpkin is offset, which is something that you'll typically see in a 1-to-1 vehicle, and the servo, or the additional weight of the servo, is on the passenger side, or our left side as we're looking at it from the front. Something else that's interesting is it looks like there's a lot of separation points, right? So these lines here appear to have separation, meaning that they come apart. Not only those lines right here, but also on the axle tubes, and the ears of the portals look like they come off. In my mind, it doesn't mean that I have to upgrade the whole axle housing to get more rigidity. It means that I only have to upgrade certain components of that housing and save some money. From what I understand, these axles are all new axles. And yeah, I mean, they look really, really good. Some of the other things that I really like about it is they finally moved away from cap screws and they're using buttons. Now the buttons do stick out, like you can see this button sticking out here, but it doesn't stick out like a cap does. So huge shout out to Axial for that. Not that my opinion matters, but it makes me feel better. Looking at a side shot, again, I mean, this truck looks really good. Very minimalistic. It's obviously built to do technical line. Another front shot there, and now we get into the rear of the axle. So you can see the lines a whole lot better on the rear axle. You can see these lines here on either side of the pumpkin. Now, this is obviously not four-wheel steer. I kind of was hoping that it was, but after the initial leak yesterday, we can see that the pumpkin is centered in the rear, meaning that it is likely a drag axle or solid axle with no steering. You can see the portal boxes and again the separation there. So instead of having to replace the whole axle housing to get better portal housings or better portal support, we could simply just unscrew it and put metal ones or brass ones or whatever you want to do on there. Now, this is obviously a lot bigger looking diff or pumpkin than on tint scale, so I am curious to see what's hiding under there. I don't know that we're actually going to get to see any pictures of that. You can see here on the bottom shot of this that there is a wire running from the skid or center section of the truck down to the rear axle, and it's powering a servo. Looking at the product details, with its dominant stance and innovative ASD, Alpha Sierra Delta, which means axial selectable drive, which is interesting, and they state that it's a more advanced and capable drive terrain version of cutting brakes. So that's interesting, adding cutting brakes to an RC. Now, I've heard of this, I've never actually seen it in person. There is a pretty big difference between a cutting brake and a drag brake. So essentially the drag brake or burn is locking up both front or both rear wheels. Now in this instance, you're only locking up one of the front or one of the rear wheels, or one of both, if you have both axles that have the technology. Now it looks like in this buggy, that cutting system only comes in the rear axle. The interesting thing though is that if you remember I was talking about these lines earlier, it looks like they created these axles to kind of puzzle together, meaning that I can actually apply the cutting brake technology to the front axle or two front axles and have a four-wheel steer buggy with both drag in the transmission or burn in the transmission, and I can have the cutting brake as well in the axle. So I can either lock up both front or both rear wheels with dig in the trans, or I can lock up one of the front or one of the rear wheels with this axle here. This is the biggest part of this release, is the axles, and it's really showcasing that Axial is not dead. It is nice to see that they are bringing new products to the market, new technology to the market. This is, again, a huge win for us, the enthusiasts and consumers of these products, because now this opens the door for, really, it's almost like Inception, right? So they planted the seed with this truck, and now other engineers or manufacturers are going to look at it and try and figure out how to copy it, clone it, or optimize it. And so, you know, the next thing you know, you're going to have micro crawlers with cutting technology, or you're going to have tint scale axles with cutting technology. And so huge shout out or props to Axial for doing this. It may not be something that we use immediately in the next 6 months, but it is something that is a groundbreaking change to the market, which is hugely refreshing. If we go down to the specifications, we can look at, we'll stop at this picture here. Let's see if we can make this a bit smaller so I can read the whole thing. New innovative axial selectable cutting brakes. Yep, we talked about that. Heavy duty, high clearance portal axles. So this is all new axles for this specific vehicle, meaning that these are not a previous axle or anything to do with a previous axle. They are completely new from the ground up. The new ASD compatible transmission. So I'm not sure what that means, right? I don't know if there is specific requirements for the ASD portion of the transmission, but the way that they make it read here, it is a requirement to have this specific transmission for these axles. It'll be really interesting to see what the transmission looks like as people get their hands on these trucks. And the all-new, yep, it is an internal spring shock. The IS-10 internal spring shocks. Hopefully these don't leak like a lot of the other ready-to-run manufacturer shocks, and this isn't any one brand specifically. Most of the RC market shocks leak out of the box. It is what it is. Scrolling down, let's look at some of the other features. It has 30% underdrive to the rear, so it does have overdrive or underdrive. However you want to look at it, basically the front wheels will spin 30% faster than the rear, or the rear wheels will spin 30% slower than the front. Really where the difference is your transmission gearing. And you overdrive the front, then the front is actually going to be a lot faster, or 30% faster than the rear, and really the truck overall, what it was meant to do out of the box. Now, if you underdrive the rear, which is what they're talking about here, 30%, the front wheels will turn the same speed as the truck did originally. The rear wheels will just turn slower. And so typically, in order to accommodate this, if you're overdriving the front, you would add a smaller pinion. So I think it said this comes with a 14-tooth pinion. So we would just drop that 14 tooth down to something like a 9 to 12 tooth pinion to accommodate for that 30% increase in wheel speed. So it has Spectrum everything in it. I'm not a huge fan of the Spectrum stuff, but I did see that they just released an Android touchscreen Spectrum remote. So it does look like Axial, or really Horizon at this point, is trying to step up the Spectrum game and make it as relevant in the marketplace as possible. Moving on, I assume that there's really no weight information in terms of front-rear weight bias. My guess is there's an overall weight, so let's look back here at the product specs. I'm going to zoom back in so we can all read them together. It does come ready to run, no assembly required. It does have full ball bearing throughout the truck, which is pretty much standard these days. The body's Lexan, as we discussed, confirm that. It does have a drag brake integrated into the ESC. The differential is locked. So the axles themselves are very curious to me, because I want to know how they are locking and unlocking each side without having a locked diff. So my assumption is that they had some sort of mechanism in the diff itself that would lock or unlock depending on how you had your axle, but I don't think that's the case, because it says here that the differential is locked. The gear pitch is 32, so it does look like they're probably using 10th scale stuff in here. It's obviously four-wheel drive, forward reverse motion. It does have LED lights like we talked about, and again, I think that there was like 7 or 8 different colors there. I'm not sure. I've seen different colors throughout the pictures, so we'll see what happens. 3S Max battery capacity. To brush setup, obviously you can see that big ugly brush motor sticking out of the front, which is not hugely attractive underneath this battery tray. Yeah, so right there you can see it. Again, not hugely attractive, but it is what it is. That'll likely get replaced by almost everybody. Product height is 9 inches. The product length is 20 inches. So this is what I was talking about earlier with the colors. You see how the Lexan panels match the cage color. I'm not a huge fan of that with the red. I think the red panels look really good. It's not changing colors. Anyway, not a huge fan of how the panels kind of melt into the cage in terms of color, or clash into the cage, whatever you want to call it. So looking at the specs, the Gilamon is 3/4 inch taller, 3 inches longer, and 7 pounds instead of 4.5 pounds, so 2.5 pounds heavier. The Capra is 10 inches wide, whereas the Gilamon is 12.6 inches wide. So what that means is, looking at some of the rules, I did post this in Discord, but the gate width minimum still is doable with these axles on most 10th scale class 3 and buggy style classes. For an example, the class 3 Sorca gate minimum is 16 inches, so you have a good 3.4 inches there where you should be able to clear those gates just fine. And realistically, I think you could probably clear 14-inch gates just fine. You could probably also get some 2.2-inch wheels and suck them over the portal housings with a different offset. It's hard to say until we actually get one in our hands and start testing those theories. Most of the WeRock classes, such as the Trail Buggy class, the Pro Mod class, the 1.9 Unlimited class, those are all 13-inch gates, so it would be a really tight fit for this 12.6-inch width. I mean, you're basically hitting those gates pretty consistently. However, the 2.2 Unlimited class is 14 inches, but I probably can see how WeRock and Sorca really doesn't need to, but I can see how they might change the rules to accommodate these axles, because this is a really cool feature that we can add to our scale buggies, because this is something that you would see in real life. One thing to note is, again, Sorca's class 3 is 16 inches, and the 2.2 Unlimited class for WeRock is 14. So I could see the WeRock rules changing to accommodate these at 16 inches as well. Again, I think you could probably squeeze these axles through 14-inch gates. It would be tricky. Now, we also need to keep in mind that when building comp courses, the gate minimum is 14 inches, meaning that it can't actually be any narrower than 14 inches. You will see a lot of gates much wider than that. You'll see them between 14 and likely 20 inches wide. And it's really going to depend on the obstacles. So if the obstacle is something that's super crazy and you have to consume 20 inches of width trying to climb it, then the gates are likely going to be between 20 and 30 inches wide. And you're really not going to be super concerned about your axle width at that point. It's more how capable your rig is. I think that the width is going to be just fine. I think this is more 10th scale width than it is 6th scale width, because if we were to take this and go and look at the SCX6 as an example, let's see what these specs are in comparison. If we were to look at a true 8th scale, right, 8th is between 10th and 6th. It's virtually in the middle, right? So you would assume that it would be between the two numbers of 10th and 6th. For example, the 10th scale Capra is 4.5 pounds. The 8th scale Gilamon is 7 pounds. However, the 6th scale SCX6 is 25. So a true 8th scale car in my mind would be closer to probably the 12-pound mark, between 10 and probably 15 pounds for true 8th scale. Now that's just my opinion, but I think that that kind of showcases, really the numbers here showcase that this truck is more 10th scale than it is 6th scale, or a larger scale. Now the product height between the Gilamon and the SCX6 is, we're sitting at 9 inches for the height and 14 inches for the SCX6. Again, this is a much larger number than, I mean, this is almost twice the height of the Capra, and the Gilamon is only 2.5 inches taller, I think, than the Capra. So again, I think it's more 10th scale. Weight is a big factor as well. So 25 pounds for this truck, whereas the Gilamon is 7 pounds and the Capra is 4.5. Anyway, overall, the numbers are pretty significant. So if we look at the wheelbase here, we're looking at almost a 20-inch wheelbase, whereas the Gilamon has a 14.5-inch wheelbase. And the Capra wheelbase is 12.5 inches, whereas the wheelbase on the SCX6 is, get back to it, almost 20 inches, and you're looking at a 14.5-inch wheelbase here. So it's really only 2 inches more than the 10th scale. Is that truly 8th scale? I don't know. But it is, again, more catered to the 10th scale market. And the reason that I bring all of this up is because I believe that they made this an 8th scale vehicle because of the axles. It's really hard, and if we go back and look at them, right, so we'll just pull this up, it's really hard to add all kinds of cool technology into something really small. We've seen that in the micro market. If you look at the SCX24, they're not actually using true diffs, they're using worm gears inside of the axle. Well, why is that? Because the smaller you make things, the harder it is to make them durable. Meaning that if we were to put a ring and pinion in a small SCX24 axle, it'll likely break much faster than that worm gear because there's a lot less material. It's just the way things are. Now, the reason, and again, speculation, my opinion, whatever, for the axles being this large is because they added this cool technology in there, and the only way that they could add it and it function properly without breaking is to make them a little bit larger, which is what they've done. I still think that this is targeting the 10th scale market, and we will see a lot of these axles in the WeRock and Sorca Class 3 areas as these axles become more available to the general public. Now again, we're not going to see these probably in this season's comps until the end of the season, maybe the middle/end, but we will start to see them, and we will also start to see these trucks in the wild. The big game changer here is for WeRock and WeRock style comps. It's really taken over in the last year. And these are a perfect fit for that type of driving. It will be very interesting to see how other manufacturers such as Deluxe or Shafty or Vanquish counter or add this type of technology to their products, because while we have really cool axles, I think the only other manufacturer that's bringing new technology to the market in terms of axles is Vanquish, right? They've created the hydro steering, right? And they added that to their H10 axles, which is really cool. Actually, Axial could incorporate the hydro steering into this axle, or another manufacturer could. Outside of that, yeah, I mean, we get some Mickey Thompson Baja Boss tires, which are probably licensed. So yeah, overall, I'll leave the link for this truck in the description below. You guys can go check it out yourself. I'm going to cut the video here because this is really all of the information that I can provide without actually having a truck in my hands, which I hope to have one in the future. We really have to tip our hats to Axial, not just me, but the community. And it doesn't matter if you plan on purchasing the truck or not. You have to thank them for revolutionizing or continuing to revolutionize the market space and bring new products, because they could just simply milk the old products until end of time, essentially. Really excited to see what these features bring, not only to this truck, but the market as a whole, because again, this is all about having fun, and this is cool, fun stuff. So there you have it, folks. My opinion, speculation, whatever you want to call it. We appreciate you making it this far. Huge shout out to the TABO club members, as always. Finally, before I end the video, I'm going to plug the Origin. So we are doing a giveaway. It's kind of more of a raffle than a giveaway for the Vanquish Origin. Now, I have 2 of them on order. We have 130 tickets left to sell for winning one. If you purchase tickets and you win, the winner will have 3 options. They'll either get to order an Origin themselves when they become available again, meaning that they'll provide the colors that they want for all of the different options, the wheels, the cage, the panels, and the axles, or they'll get the money. So I will just PayPal them all of the money that I have for the event sales or the ticket sales, or they'll get the option to take one of my trucks. Now, I'm going to open one of my trucks. I will keep 2 personally, one for the channel to run, and one is going to probably stay sealed in a box. But I will give the one that's sealed or open to the winner of the contest, meaning that I'll ship it to them directly if they win, instead of having to wait another 3 to 6 months to get theirs from Vanquish. Now, there's some caveats there. Obviously, if it's already open, then you're going to get one that's already open. If you choose the closed one, you'll get that. But either way, they do ship with a MSO or a title, so you will get that title as well. The unfortunate part, it will have my name on it. So I will sign it over to you or leave it blank, and you can sign it however you would like. So those are the 3 options for the winner. I'll leave a link for purchasing the tickets in the description below. There's no gimmicks, no funny business. It's legitimately pooling everybody's money together. You don't have to purchase merchandise. You don't have to purchase any of these things. It's really just a way that I can give back to the community. I wish I could give away an Origin without having to have ticket sales, but we'll get there. We will get there. With that being said, we are going to do another giveaway outside of that, a pure free giveaway, in the very near future, so stay tuned for that. And as always, we hope you have a great day.